Imagine being the only human in a colossal courtroom, surrounded by aliens who look at you like you're something they'd scrape off their boot. That was Commander Elias Vance. He was chained in the heart of the conclave of 12 suns, the highest court in the galaxy, and they were about to bring the hammer down on him for a crime he didn't commit. What would you do if the whole universe had already decided you were a monster? Stick around, because how this ends is something you will not see coming. Circling him were 12 platforms, each holding a judge from a species that was ancient when Earth was still cooling. There were the Gather, giant insects whose jaws clicked hungrily, and the Seraphim, who shimmered like they were woven from starlight. The hulking Draxavi, with scales like battle armor, glared at him with pure, ancient hatred. He was surrounded by beings he'd only read about in history books, and every single one of them despised humans. Humanity was the new kid on the block, having joined the Galactic Covenant only 90 years ago. To creatures who measured time in millennia, humans were just loud, arrogant children. The head judge's voice, a series of sharp clicks translated by a hovering drone, echoed in the chamber. Commander Elias Vance of the Human Federation, you are accused of destroying the sacred moon of Sareth, leading to the deaths of 40,000 pilgrims. How do you plead? Elias lifted his head. His uniform was torn, his face a canvas of bruises, but his voice was steady. I am innocent, he declared, the words ringing out in the cavernous room. My ship wasn't attacking that moon. We were trying to save it. A wave of harsh, ugly laughter erupted from the gallery. The ambassador from Volante, a towering creature with 6 arms, turned a deep, furious shade of purple. Lies! The ambassador screeched. The sensor logs don't lie. The witnesses don't lie. Your ship fired on our holy site and massacred our people. A massive hologram shimmered into existence, showing Elias's own ship, the Perseverance, bearing down on the moon. He was forced to watch as blinding flashes of weapon fire erupted from his vessel. He watched the moon's surface bloom into silent, fiery flowers of destruction. But it was a ghost story, a deep fake on a galactic scale. That's not what happened, Elias shouted, his voice finally breaking. We picked up a distress call. When we arrived, another ship was already there, a pitch-black vessel with no markings. We engaged them, we drove them off, but we were too late. A mystery ship? How convenient, a Draxavi judge rumbled, his voice thick with sarcasm. You claim another ship was there, yet not one sensor log in the entire quadrant shows anything but your vessel. Because they wiped the records, Elias fired back. They doctored the footage. Someone is playing this entire court for a bunch of fools. The chamber exploded into a storm of angry shouts. The Volante ambassador shot up, spreading all 6 of his arms wide. This is what humans do, he bellowed. They lie, they manipulate, and they destroy. They've been in this covenant for less than a century, and they've already shown their true colors. They are savages, unworthy of a place among the stars. Every word was like a punch to the gut. Elias thought of his crew sitting in cold cells. He thought of his family back home, watching this sham trial broadcast across the galaxy. He thought of every human who would be branded a killer because of this lie. I didn't do this, he whispered, but the sound was swallowed by the chaos. The lead judge raised a claw, and a heavy silence descended. The evidence is absolute, she pronounced. The human ship fired on a sacred world, killing 40,000 innocents. Unless shocking new evidence is presented, this court finds the accused guilty. The sentence is death. Elias squeezed his eyes shut. All his life he had served humanity, protected the innocent, and fought for peace. And this was his reward? To be executed by aliens who had judged him before he even set foot in the room. But just as he steeled himself for the end, the impossible happened. A low hum started to fill the chamber. At first it was just a faint vibration, so subtle he thought it was in his head. But it grew louder, clearer, a pure, resonant tone that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The judges looked around, completely bewildered. The Volante ambassador froze with his mouth open. In the exact center of the room, on a pedestal right behind Elias, sat a massive, perfectly black crystal. It was the Relic of Axiom, an artifact left by the legendary precursors who seeded life throughout the galaxy millions of years ago. For 10,000 years, it had been a silent, dead monument. But now, thin veins of brilliant gold light were racing across its surface like lightning trapped in glass. The hum swelled into a powerful chord that vibrated deep inside Elias's bones. The lead judge actually stumbled backward, her massive eyes wide with shock. "Impossible," she whispered. "The relic hasn't awakened since the last bearer of truth walked these halls," another judge finished, his voice trembling with a forgotten awe. 10,000 years. The light pulsed like a giant cosmic heartbeat, shaking the entire space station. Then a voice spoke. It wasn't loud, but it bloomed inside every mind in the room simultaneously, ancient, absolute, and impossible to ignore. "A soul stands accused. A soul cries for truth. I shall weigh what has been hidden." The golden light exploded from the relic in a silent, expanding wave. It passed through walls, machines, and the judges themselves. As it washed over Elias, he gasped, feeling a gentle presence exploring his mind, his memories, his very heart. Then the light wrapped around him like a warm blanket and lifted him clean off the floor. The judges just stared, their arrogance completely shattered. The ambassador's skin had faded to a pale, sickly gray. The voice spoke again. "This soul speaks truth." But another soul in this chamber wears a mask of lies. The beam of light, almost like it was having fun, swiveled away from Elias and shot directly toward the Volante delegation. For the first time, Ambassador Sur looked like a trapped animal. The golden light was like a new sun, burning away every shadow in the room. Elias floated in its glow, the chains on his wrists feeling as flimsy as thread. He could feel the relic's mind, an intelligence so vast and ancient it made the entire conclave look like toddlers playing make-believe. The most powerful beings in the galaxy were humbled. The insectoid. Gather judges clacked their mandibles in terror. The beautiful seraphim dimmed their own light, as if bowing their heads. Even the proud Draxovi warlords lowered their heads in submission. They all knew the legends of the Relic of Axiom, but they never truly believed them. Now, the living truth was floating right in front of them. "What is this?" A younger judge, from a species known for its cold logic, stammered. "It's a rock. This has to be some kind of human trick." The ancient voice answered him directly, a hint of amusement in its tone. "I am no trick. child of logic. I was ancient when your sun was nothing but a cloud of dust. I have watched empires rise and crumble like sandcastles in the tide. I exist for one purpose, to reveal the truth when lies threaten to set the galaxy on fire. The relic pulsed again, and ghostly images filled the air, playing Elias's memories for everyone to see. There was the Perseverance picking up the faint distress call. There was Elias ordering his crew to divert course and race to help, even though they were exhausted and on their way home. They saw the ship drop out of warp over the moon and fly into a living nightmare. A sleek, black, unmarked ship was mercilessly bombarding the surface. It was firing without pause, turning temples and shelters packed with pilgrims into smoldering craters. "All power to weapons! Target that ship!" the memory of Elias shouted. "Get us between them and the moon!" The Perseverance charged into the fray, trading blows with the phantom attacker. The black ship, taking damage, finally turned to run. But as it fled, it launched one last massive torpedo. It streaked toward the moon's largest temple. The Perseverance fired everything it had, trying to shoot it down, but it was too late. The torpedo found its mark. The explosion was beyond catastrophic. The black ship vanished into hyperspace, leaving the Perseverance floating alone in a graveyard of debris and death. The only ship there when the first rescue crews arrived. The images faded, leaving the chamber in a state of stunned, absolute silence. Elias didn't even realize he was crying. He had tried so hard. "You see," the relic's voice resonated gently, "this soul feels guilt, not for murder, but for failing to save them all. It is the burden of a hero, not the crime of a killer." Ambassador Sir lunged forward, his face a twisted mask of panic. "This proves nothing." "He could still be lying," someone whispered. "Everyone knows humans are masters of deception, their minds a storm of chaos." "You dare speak of deception?" the ancient cold voice echoed as the golden light pulsed dangerously. "Let us speak of yours." The light shot away from Elias, the human who had been on trial, and stretched like a predator's claw toward the accusers, the Volante delegation. Ambassador Sir stumbled back as the light zeroed in on him. He shrieked, "No, stop! I'm a diplomat. I have immunity. This violates every law in the Covenant." The ancient relic simply replied, "I am older than your covenant. I am older than your species, and the laws I answer to are far, far higher than any you have ever written, model." The light wrapped around Cirrus like a cage. He struggled against it, a cornered animal fighting a ghost, but it was pointless. And then, just as it had for Elias, the story of his life began to play out in the air for everyone to see. But this wasn't a tale of innocence. It was a highlight reel of pure evil. The entire chamber watched in horror as the ambassador was shown meeting with his secret council. They whispered with venom about humanity's quick rise, the alliances they were building, and the threat they could pose in 100 years. "They must be stopped," the memory of Cirrus sneered, "before they grow too strong for us to control." "But how?" another official countered. "The humans haven't violated any laws." A cold, cruel smile twisted the face of the memory of Cirrus, a look that made his real-time panic seem even more pathetic. "Then we'll give the Covenant a reason," he declared. "We'll frame them for an act so horrible, so unforgivable, that the entire galaxy will scream for their annihilation. We will paint them as the monsters." The memories continued to spill out, one conspiracy after another. The court saw Cirrus personally hiring the crew of the black ship used in the attack. They saw him select the moon of Sareth as the target, choosing it specifically because it was a holy place, knowing the slaughter of pilgrims would spark maximum outrage. They saw him bribing technicians to alter sensor logs, wiping away any trace of his ship. And then, the most stomach-turning memory of all. Him, reading the casualty reports and smiling.
40,000 dead, the memory of Cirrus noted, glancing up from his data slate. Excellent. This is more than enough. The humans are finished. When the images finally vanished, a new kind of quiet fell over the chamber. A silence thick with shock, disgust, and a rage just waiting to explode. The other delegates from his own world stared at their ambassador, their eyes wide with betrayal. You could see it written all over their faces. They were completely in the dark. They looked like they were about to be sick. Across the chamber, the massive Dracovi warlord stood up, their armored scales practically vibrating with fury. In their culture, framing an innocent to murder your own people was the ultimate dishonor, a crime worse than any other. "You," one of them snarled, pointing a giant clawed hand at Cirrus. "You are garbage."
"You are less than garbage."
Cirrus had fallen to his knees, the blood draining from his face until his skin was a ghastly, terrified white. He couldn't form words, couldn't even move. All he could do was stare up at the golden artifact humming above him. "The truth has been shown," the relic's voice echoed. "The accused is innocent, the accuser is guilty. But there is more." Elias looked up, his mind spinning. What else could there possibly be? The relic's golden glow came back to him, circling him slowly. It was a strange feeling, like it wasn't just looking at him, but into him, searching for something hidden in his very soul. "This soul," the relic announced, its ancient voice now filled with a new tone, something that sounded like awe. "This soul bears the mark." The golden light zeroed in on Elias's chest, getting brighter and brighter until it was like looking at the sun. He shut his eyes tight, feeling a powerful but painless warmth. He felt something shift inside of him, like a door that had been sealed his entire life had just been kicked off its hinges. When he finally dared to peek, he looked down. A perfect circle of his uniform had been vaporized right over his heart. And there, glowing on his skin, was a symbol. A complex, beautiful mark made of pure golden light, with patterns that seemed to shift and dance as he stared. The oldest Cathari judge, a being of incredible age and wisdom, made a noise Elias had never heard before. A choked gasp that was one part shock, one part reverence. Then she slowly, deliberately, lowered her ancient frame to the floor, bowing to him. "The bearer," she whispered, her voice full of awe. "After 10,000 years, the relic has found a new bearer of justice." One after another, every single judge in the chamber did the same. They weren't bowing to Elias, the human soldier. They were bowing to what he represented now. He was something new, something ancient, a figure the galaxy had long dismissed as a myth. And Elias just stood there, still in chains, with a glowing symbol on his chest, trying to understand how his entire life had just been flipped on its head. The chamber erupted into chaos, with voices shouting in a dozen different languages, but Elias couldn't hear any of it. He just stared at the mark, feeling its soft, warm rhythm against his skin. It also felt heavy, carrying a weight he couldn't possibly understand, a link to something ancient and massive. "What is happening to me?" he whispered to himself. The relic's voice answered, but this time it was inside his own head, a private conversation for him alone. "You have been chosen, child of Earth. The bearer of justice is a sacred responsibility. When a great evil rises to threaten the balance of the galaxy, the bearer is summoned to set things right. You can no longer be lied to. No harm can come to you while you are on the path of truth, and you will find no rest until justice has been done." Elias shook his head, totally overwhelmed. "I'm just a soldier," he thought back. "I'm not anyone special." "That," the relic answered, "is exactly why you were chosen." Before he could even begin to process that, a Cathari guard hurried forward and unlocked his chains. His wrists were raw and chafed, but he barely noticed. The guard gave a deep bow, avoiding his gaze, and then quickly backed away. The eldest judge finally got to her feet, her voice shaking just a little. "The relic has spoken. Commander Elias Vance is cleared of all charges. Moreover, he is now the bearer of justice, a title that has gone unfilled for 10,000 years. She paused, her insect-like jaws clicking nervously. This court must now determine the fate of the real criminal. Every single eye in the room turned to Ambassador Cirrus. He was trying to stand, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. Two of his own aides took a step back from him, their faces twisted in pure disgust. "This is impossible," Cirrus shrieked, his voice breaking. "The relic is a fairy tale, a story for children. The human must have done something to trick it." "Silence!" one of the Dracovi warlords boomed, stepping down from his platform with a heavy thud that shook the floor. "You murdered your own citizens. 40,000 innocent lives, children, families, pilgrims who sought nothing but peace. And you did it for political gain, because you were afraid of a species that has never shown you any hostility." Cirrus desperately jabbed a trembling finger at Elias. "Humans are a disease. They expand too fast. I was protecting our future." "You were protecting your career." Another judge, a creature made of pure light, flashed with anger. "We saw your memories, Ambassador. We saw you smile when you heard how many died. You felt zero remorse. Only the satisfaction that your disgusting scheme had succeeded." Cirrus had run out of words. He desperately scanned the room, looking for a single friendly face, but all he found was scorn. Elias watched the whole scene play out, the mark on his chest pulsing like a steady heartbeat. With every pulse, he felt a strange new sense of clarity. He could look at Cirrus and feel the true weight of his crimes, sense the echoes of 40,000 souls demanding justice. It was horrifying, but it also felt right. "What should his punishment be?" the eldest judge asked, but she wasn't talking to the court. She was looking right at Elias. "Bearer, the relic has chosen you as its voice. It is your duty to declare his sentence." Elias blinked, totally shocked. "Me? I don't have any authority here." "You now possess the highest authority in the galaxy," the judge answered gently. "The bearer of justice speaks for those who came before. On this matter, your word is final." Elias looked at Cirrus, who stared back with wide, terrified eyes, clearly bracing for a death sentence, and a part of Elias wanted that, to just end it. But as the mark on his chest pulsed with warmth, Elias knew what he had to do. "Death is too simple," he said, his voice quiet but carrying through the now silent chamber. "You took the lives of 40,000 people.
Their families will grieve for the rest of their days. Their worlds are now forever stained by this tragedy. And you think you deserve a quick exit? A simple way out from what you've done?" Elias started walking slowly toward Cirrus, who scrambled backward on the floor until he hit the wall. "The relic showed me everything," Elias went on, his voice gaining strength.
"This wasn't your first time, was it? You've built your entire career by sacrificing innocents, staging smaller incidents and blaming them on rival species." A wave of gasps swept through the chamber. Elias nodded, his new insight giving him all the confirmation he needed. There was a mining colony on Vex 7, right? An unfortunate accident that you pinned on the Tavak. "And the research station near the Seraphine border," Elias continued, the memories flowing through him. "That was your work too, wasn't it? An attack designed to blame the Cathari." He knew with absolute certainty that Ambassador Cirrus had been pulling these strings for decades, starting fires just to climb higher up the political ladder. The courtroom exploded. The Tovaki judge slammed his fist on his desk. The Seraphine delegate began to glow with a blindingly furious light, and the Cathari representative clicked their mandibles in rage. Cirrus stared around wildly, his eyes filled with panic. "These are lies, all of them." "The human is trying to trick you." Elias just shook his head calmly. "But the relic, it can't lie. And neither can I, not anymore." He turned to face the entire assembly. "Here is my judgment. Ambassador Cirrus will not be executed. He will be sent back to his home world, and the light of the relic is going with him." With a raised hand, Elias unleashed a power that sealed the ambassador's fate. The glowing symbol on his own chest flared to life, and a wave of pure golden energy slammed into Sir's chest. The man let out a horrifying shriek as the light burned into his skin, branding him not with the noble crest of a bearer, but with a twisted, ugly mark of shame that pulsed with a sickly gray light. "That brand will never fade," Elias's voice rang out. "And you can never hide it. Every volante who sees it will know your sins. They will see your memories, feel the fear of your victims. You will spend the rest of your life as a walking reminder of your own evil." All Sir could do was gape at the throbbing brand, his face a perfect picture of terror. "No, please just end it," he whimpered. "I'm begging you." "You don't get to decide your fate," Elias said, his voice as cold and empty as space. "The ones you killed have already decided for you. Every pilgrim you ordered executed, every family you destroyed. They want you to live with this ambassador. They want you to hurt, and you will." He turned his back on the pathetic man and faced the assembled judges. "The Volante people are not responsible for these atrocities, only their corrupt leaders. I ask this court to help them build something better, a government that actually serves its people instead of feeding them to the wolves." The eldest judge lowered her head in a sign of deep respect. "It will be done as you command, bearer. The Covenant will send aid and advisors to oversee the transition to new leadership." Elias gave a single heavy nod. The mark on his chest was still warm, but the overwhelming sense of purpose was already starting to fade. The immediate threat was gone. Justice had been served, but as his eyes swept across the chamber, at the bowing judges, the stunned delegates, and the broken ambassador, a cold dread washed over him, making his stomach drop. This wasn't over. This was only the beginning. The galaxy was filled with injustice, drowning in secret crimes and ancient evils, and now he was the one responsible for fixing it all. The bearer of justice was awake, and his work was just getting started. 3 days had gone by since the trial, but Elias had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he could feel them. Millions upon millions of voices crying out from every corner of the galaxy, all begging for justice. Some were screams of raw desperation that rattled his soul. Others were just faint whispers, like the echoes of old wounds that had never closed. The mark on his chest was a constant throbbing reminder, a direct connection to a universe of suffering he never even knew was there. He was holed up in the quarters they gave him on the station. The place was massive and luxurious, decked out with priceless art from a dozen worlds, a suite meant for royalty or high-ranking ambassadors. Elias felt completely out of place. A soft chime rang at the door. He didn't bother to look up. "It's open." The door slid aside, revealing Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka. She'd been his first officer on the Perseverance, and like the rest of his crew, she'd been released from the brig the moment the truth came out. Worry was written all over her face as she sized him up. "Commander," she said softly, "you look like hell." Elias managed a short, bitter laugh. "Thanks, Lieutenant. I can always count on you to be blunt." Tanaka sat down in the chair across from him. "The crew's worried sick about you. We all are. What in the world happened back there?" She shook her head. "We can't make any sense of it." "That makes two of us," Elias confessed, staring down at his hands. They were the same hands he'd had his whole life, calloused from his years in the service and marked with a web of old scars. But they felt alien now, like they belonged to someone else. "The judges have been sending over requests," Tanaka continued. "Messages are pouring in from all over. Some people want an audience with you. A lot of them are asking for help. A few want to study you like some kind of lab rat. And I'm pretty sure a couple of them want to kill you, though they weren't quite that direct about it." "I know," Elias said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "I can feel them. Every last one." He tapped the spot on his chest where the mark's gentle glow was visible through his shirt. "This thing, it connects me to something I can't even begin to wrap my head around. It's like trying to feel every single drop of water in a river at the exact same time." Tanaka was quiet for a few seconds. "So what are you going to do?" Before Elias could even form a response, a new voice spoke from the doorway. "He will do what the bearer has always done. He will answer the call." They both spun around to see an ancient Cathari standing there. It was the lead judge from the trial. Her outer shell was faded and worn by time, and she moved with a slow, careful elegance. But her complex, multifaceted eyes were as sharp and clear as distant stars. "May I enter?" she asked, her voice a series of gentle clicks and whistles. Elias nodded. "Please." The old judge made her way into the room, lowering her large body onto a specially reinforced chair. She studied Elias with an expression he couldn't decipher. "My name is Vathira," she said. "I have served on this court for 300 years. I never thought I would live to see the relic awaken, and I certainly never dreamed it would choose a human." "You and me both," Elias muttered. Thera made a soft clicking sound that sounded almost like a laugh. "You are taking this better than most. The last bearer, 10,000 years ago, was a seraphine named Luminax. When the relic chose them, they fought the calling for almost a decade. They simply refused to accept such a heavy burden." "What finally changed their mind?" Elias asked. "A war," Vathira said, her tone turning grim. "A horrific conflict that nearly ripped this quadrant of the galaxy in two. Luminax finally embraced the mark and ended the war in a single year. They revealed the truth, that a hidden enemy was manipulating both sides. They united the old enemies against the real foe." She paused, her gaze distant. "And then they were gone. Vanished. No one ever knew what happened to them. The relic fell silent, and the bearer was never seen again." A shiver ran down Elias's spine. "So is that what's waiting for me? I serve until I'm completely burned out, and then I just vanish?" "I cannot say," Thera admitted. "The relic does not offer explanations. It simply acts when the galaxy is thrown out of balance, and it has chosen you, Commander. A human, a member of the youngest species in this entire covenant." "Why?" Elias asked, the one question that had been eating away at him since it all happened. "Why me? There are billions of people out there who are smarter, older, and have way more experience than I do." Vathira was silent for a long moment. She leaned forward, her ancient eyes meeting his. "I have a theory," she said, "if you would like to hear it." Elias nodded. "The relic doesn't choose the strongest or the most intelligent. It chooses the one with the right kind of heart, the kind that sees something wrong and is literally incapable of turning away, the kind that helps a total stranger, even at great personal cost." She gestured with a thin limb toward Tanaka. "Your first officer told me about the distress signal. You were headed home, at the end of a very long tour. Your crew was running on fumes. You had zero obligation to answer that call, but you did it anyway." "Anyone would have done the same," Elias protested. "No," Thera stated, her voice firm. "They would not have. Most would have logged the signal and kept going. They would have told themselves that someone else would get to it, that it wasn't their responsibility." She clicked her mandibles together as if in thought. "You humans have a strange quality. You're a young race, and often a very reckless one. You make enormous mistakes, but you also have something that many of the older races have lost over time. A stubborn, almost irrational refusal to accept that suffering is just a fact of life. You see someone in pain, and your first instinct is to try and fix it, even when it seems impossible." Tanaka spoke up then, her voice full of pride. "Commander Vance has always been like that. He once risked his whole career to save a ship full of refugees our own government was about to abandon. He told me he couldn't live with himself if he left them to die." Vathira nodded slowly. "And that is why the relic chose you, Commander. Not because your species is better than any other, but because you have not yet learned to be cynical. You haven't given up and accepted that the universe is an unjust place. And right now, that makes you exactly what the galaxy needs." Elias just sat there, letting her words wash over him. The mark on his chest pulsed in a steady rhythm, and he could feel those faraway cries for help getting sharper, more distinct. There were so many of them. Far too many. He could live 1,000 lives and never answer them all. But he could answer one. He had to start somewhere. "So what happens now?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Vithira slowly pushed herself up from her chair. "That is for you to decide, bearer. The relic has given you the power and a mission, but it will not give you orders. How you use this gift is entirely up to you." She walked to the door, then paused and looked back at him. "But know this. The entire galaxy is watching you. Your next move will shape how every other species sees humanity for generations to come. This is your chance to prove the relic made a wise choice. Or you can prove that Ambassador Sir was right about your people all along." And with that, she left. Elias sat in the heavy silence that followed. Tanaka just watched him, her face a mask of concern. "Commander," she finally said, "what are you thinking about?" Elias got up and walked over to the giant window, looking out at the endless blanket of stars. Billions of tiny lights. Every single one was a sun with its own planets, its own people, and its own problems. "I'm thinking," he said, his voice low, "that I never wanted any of this. I don't want this power. And I'm terrified of what it means and what it's going to cost me." He spun around, trying to face her, but it was already done. The ancient relic had picked me. And these voices I can't stop hearing, the ones begging for help, they aren't in my head. They're real people, trapped in the gears of real injustice, and I can't just pretend it's not my problem. There's no looking away now. Taking a deep breath to steady his nerves, he squared his shoulders. "Lieutenant, it's time to get to work." A real smile finally broke across Tanaka's face, the first one he'd seen in what felt like forever. "Absolutely, Commander. What's our destination?" Elias closed his eyes, honing in on the glowing mark. 1,000,000 cries for help echoed in his mind, but one broke through with shocking clarity. It was a small colony out on the very edge of known space, where a heartless corporation was grinding its people into dust. Men were dying down in the mines while their families starved topside. "There's a colony, Nexus 9, he announced, his voice solid as rock. "Something is deeply wrong there. That's our first stop." Tanaka gave a sharp nod and immediately left to get the crew ready. Elias remained at the window, just staring out at the endless ocean of stars. The mark on his chest began to pulse with a gentle light, growing brighter than before, almost as if it was agreeing with his choice. The bearer of justice was punching in for his first shift, and the galaxy had no idea what was about to hit it. 6 months flew by since that fateful trial at the Conclave of 12 Suns. In that short span, Elias Vance had set foot on 19 different worlds, and he brought justice to every last one. He toppled corrupt governors and completely tore apart entire criminal organizations. He freed slaves and shut down pointless wars, dragging some of the most powerful people in the galaxy into the light to answer for their crimes. And with every single mission, his legend just got bigger. The Perseverance dropped out of hyperspace with a whisper, appearing directly in orbit over Earth. Elias stood on the bridge, quietly watching his homeworld grow to fill the main view screen. He took in the brilliant blue of the oceans, the vibrant green of the land, and the familiar, beautiful swirl of white clouds. It had been more than a year since he'd last laid eyes on it. "Commander," Tanaka's voice gently broke his trance, "we're being hit with thousands of messages. The whole planet knows you've returned." Elias nodded slowly. "I thought they might." His trial had changed absolutely everything for Earth. The entire human race had seen the footage, the ancient device waking from its slumber to choose one of them. They learned the awful truth about the Valanthi conspiracy and saw their species transform overnight from galactic pariahs to the keepers of the galaxy's most sacred duty.
For millions of humans, Elias was now a true hero, a living symbol of what humanity could achieve. His face was on every screen and poster across dozens of colony worlds. Children even had games where they pretended to be the bearer of justice. For others, he was more complicated, a walking, talking reminder that the rest of the galaxy was now watching them, a challenge to step up and prove themselves worthy of the honor he carried. But for a very small group, the powerful, the corrupt, and the cruel, he had become their absolute worst nightmare. "Bring us into a stable orbit," Elias ordered. "I need to speak to the United Earth Council." As the massive ship settled into its designated position, Elias made his way to the communications center. The message he was about to send would be broadcast to every human settlement in the known galaxy.
He had spent a long time thinking about the right words to say. When the signal went live, he was standing alone, framed against a simple gray wall. No flags, no fancy logos, no distractions. It was just a man with a glowing symbol on his chest, holding the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. "My name is Elias Vance," he began. 6 months ago, I stood accused of a terrible crime. The entire galaxy was ready to condemn humanity. They decided we were violent, primitive, and not fit to be among the stars." He let the silence hang in the air for a moment. "They were wrong about me. But the question they asked is one we still have to answer for ourselves. What kind of people are we? Who will we choose to be as we reach out into the cosmos? Are we going to be the monsters they thought we were? Or are we going to show them something they never expected?" He lightly touched the mark on his chest. "The Relic of Axiom chose me for a reason. It wasn't because I'm the strongest person or the smartest. And it's definitely not because humans are better than any other species. It chose me because of a single, simple decision. I heard someone crying for help, and I answered. I was exhausted, it was dangerous, and I had 1,000 good reasons to just keep walking. But I didn't. That moment, that choice, is the only thing that truly matters. It's what defines us as individuals and as a species. It isn't our technology or the strength of our armies, but the choices we make when we're sure no one is watching. It's the kindness we offer when nobody would blame us for just looking away." He stared directly into the camera lens. "I've seen some horrible things these past 6 months. Injustices that have been allowed to fester for centuries, so much suffering that the galaxy has just accepted it as normal. But you know what else I've seen? Hope. I've seen people push back against the darkness with nothing but their own courage, refusing to surrender even when things seemed hopeless. Humanity is the new kid on the block in this galaxy. We have so much to learn. But we also have something special to offer, a fresh perspective and a stubborn refusal to believe that things can't be better. The older species, they've forgotten what justice is supposed to feel like. They've made their peace with corruption and cruelty. We haven't. Not yet. And I'm asking you to help me make sure that we never do. Every choice you make counts. Every small act of kindness creates ripples. Every time you help a stranger, you're proving the Relic made the right choice. Every time you stand up against unfairness, no matter how small it seems, you are speaking for all of us. I can't be in all places at once. I can't fix all of this by myself, but if all of us, every single human on every single world, just decides to make one good choice that counts, we can change this entire galaxy. He offered a small, knowing smile. They called us criminals, so we became the guardians of justice. They tried to write us off. Now, let's show them just how wrong they were. The broadcast cut out. Elias stood in the silence for a moment before turning back toward the bridge. Tanaka was waiting for him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. That was beautiful, Commander. It was just the truth, Elias replied simply. I believed every word. So, she asked, what's our next move? Elias walked to the main view screen and looked down at the blue and green marble of Earth. Down on that planet, billions of humans were watching and thinking and deciding what kind of future they were going to build. Now, he said, we get back to work. As if it was waiting for that cue, the mark on his chest pulsed with a soft light. A new voice, a new cry for help, had already found him across the vast, impossible emptiness of space. It was coming from a colony on the far side of the galaxy. Something was wrong there. Something unfair, something that had to be made right. Elias closed his eyes, listening carefully. The voice was a child's, a little girl whose family had been taken by raiders. She was alone, terrified, hiding in the dark and praying that somebody, anybody, would hear her and come save her. Set a course for the outer reaches, Elias commanded. Get us there as fast as you can. Yes, Commander, Tanaka said, without a moment's hesitation. The crew hurried to their stations, and the Perseverance began its slow, majestic turn away from Earth as the ship launched itself back toward the stars. Elias couldn't help but think about everything that brought him to this point. He remembered the icy grip of fear as he stood in chains, completely sure he was about to be executed for a crime he didn't commit. He remembered the blinding flash of light as the Relic awoke, the searing pain as its mark burned itself onto his chest. He thought about Ambassador Sur, who was now a disgraced exile on his own homeworld, his name forever linked to his treachery. He thought about the Volanthi, desperately trying to rebuild their government, finally free from the corruption that had rotted it from the inside. And he thought about the future, about a galaxy that was slowly and painfully beginning to change. A galaxy that was relearning that justice wasn't just a word in a book, but a real, unstoppable force. A galaxy that was learning that humans, the young and reckless newcomers, were the ones who would have to remind them what that word really meant. The Perseverance tore a hole in reality and jumped into hyperspace, the stars outside stretching into brilliant streaks of light. Later that night, in the quiet of his own quarters, Elias finally allowed himself to relax. The mark on his chest was still glowing, a constant link to all the suffering in the galaxy. But he'd figured out how to turn the volume down just enough to get some rest. Before he drifted to sleep, he remembered something Vithkira had told him, that the last bearer of justice had simply disappeared after their work was finished. He wondered if that was how his own story would end. He wondered if there would come a day when the galaxy simply didn't need him anymore. But that day wasn't today. Today there was a little girl who was waiting for a hero. Today there were wrongs that had to be righted and truths that had to be spoken. Tomorrow would have its own battles, with new enemies and new injustices crying out for someone to stop them. And Elias would be there to answer the call. Not because he was special, and not because he was powerful, but because he had made a choice. The exact same choice that kicked off this entire insane adventure. The choice to answer when he heard someone ask for help. He smiled to himself in the darkness of his room. The galaxy had judged humanity and found them guilty, but the Relic had judged them and found them worthy.
And so Elias Vance, now known as the bearer of justice, would spend the rest of his days proving the Relic had made the right choice. He would do it one decision at a time, one person at a time, until justice was no longer just a fairy tale, but a real feeling everyone in the galaxy could share. The spaceship, Perseverance, pushed on through the deep dark, its crew ready for the next mission, the next challenge, the next chance to make the universe a slightly better place. And light years away, in the timeless sacred halls of the Conclave of 12 Suns, the Relic of Axiom pulsed with a warm golden glow. It was watching, and for the first time in a long, long while, it was hopeful. It believed that it had finally found the right people to carry its important weight. It had waited for 10,000 years for this, and it was worth the wait.